So trying to eat less really was the way to lose weight. Don't you think we'd all have perfect bodies by now? This week, I share exactly why eating less advice backfires and the surprising strategy that actually works. So, welcome to Joyful Eating, episode 231. And today we're talking about why eating less backfires and the surprising strategy that actually works. But before we get to that, the best bite I had the other day, I've been getting into more Chinese cuisine. One of my friends, Aggie's Chinese, and she came and visited, and we were talking a lot about Chinese cooking. And I've just been setting that intention to rather than choose my natural inclination, which is to go for Italian or Middle Easterny flavors, actually choosing Asian flavors instead. And so I made this frittata. So I'd had some broccoli and some greens from the garden that I'd steamed ages ago, before. And so I just put them in a dish with some eggs and then put that in the air fryer to cook. And then when it came out, I served it with just drizzled with some oyster sauce and some chopped up green onion. And I think I used seaweed as well on it because I'd cleaned up my pantry and I was wanting to use up the seaweed, the nori roll sheet. So not exactly Chinese, but it worked together really well. Like that oyster sauce added such umami, but also a little bit sweetness, and just like the egg and the greens, like broccoli and the greens worked so well together. Who knew that healthy food could be so delicious? Okay, so in this episode, we're going to cover the story behind how I learned why eating less backfires, and then we'll talk about exactly why eating less is a problem, and I'll share with you the surprising strategy that actually works instead. And then I'll also share with you the biggest mistake I see people making when they discover this. Like there's a common mistake that people make with it and with this new approach. And then I've got some bonus tips for you as well, and a tiny habit to get you started experimenting with this in your own life. Okay, so in terms of how I discovered this truth, I kind of instinctively knew for a very long time that there was more to weight loss than just eating less and moving more, right? And then a few years ago, I read an article written actually by a psychologist, and he had a theory that there's physical hunger, but there's also a psychological component to our hunger. And so he himself wanted to lose weight, so he decided to do an experiment with himself and to turn off the psychological component of hunger so that he stopped overeating and so that his weight would shift. And so his approach was, I'm going to let myself eat meals and eat until I'm satisfied. And then, just that's the only change I'm going to make. And what he found was, when he let himself feel satisfied at meal times, it turned off his psychological hunger. So he wasn't always thinking about food. He wasn't always reaching for snacks. And just without pretty much doing anything else over time, and I should have looked up the numbers, but over 8 months, I think he lost 50 pounds or something like that, just from making this one change. So he's right. There's a physical component to hunger, but there's also a psychological component to hunger. So why eating less backfires is because when we tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm eating less," or we actually count calories and actually set the intention to eat less than our body, go into a calorie deficit, so we're eating less than our body needs, that actually increases physical hunger as well, but it also increases this psychological hunger. So it puts us in our brains into, well, we're in food scarcity mode. And so what that does is that it creates this unsatisfaction in our brain, and then it drives overeating in the future. So, and it might be, if you're trying to eat less at lunch, you might end up then going crazy in the afternoon, like having afternoon snacks. Or if you're trying to eat less at dinner time, you might then be going back to the pantry, or when you're cleaning up and you're not satisfied, so you're like picking. And so of course that strategy backfires because we end up eating more than if we hadn't if we hadn't have set the intention to eat less in the first place. And so what's the alternative? What's the surprising strategy that actually works? It's this idea of letting yourself feel satisfied. And that's like feeling that physical satisfaction, but also that mental satisfaction as well. And why this works is because when we're letting ourselves feel satisfied, it turns off the psychological hunger, it turns off the physical hunger. So then our bodies and our brains aren't pestering us for more and more food. So it stops us from that overeating that comes when we aren't feeling satisfied. And you will have experienced that you've had a big meal, like the food's the last thing on your mind. You're moving on with your day, you've got other things going on, and it's because you're letting yourself feel that satisfaction. So what we want to do is bring that into your everyday eating. And particularly like if you have that intention that I do want to lose some weight, it's really important to let yourself feel satisfied. And so the biggest mistake that comes up for this is like it's such an ingrained part of our culture that yeah, if you want to lose weight, you have to eat less, you have to deny yourself, you have to restrict, you have to like, feel like some sort of pain. The biggest mistake, I think, is actually really fully letting yourself believe and like your brain and your body believe that, yeah, if I eat until I'm satisfied, I will lose weight. And that's one of the biggest mindset shifts that I work on with people in the Naturally Healthy Club is actually helping them build evidence that, yes, eating until I'm satisfied is the way to lose weight. It's actually, this is the way that I'm going to get there, because their brains keep wanting to go, oh yeah, but you need to buckle up. You need to, be more serious about this. You need to, and it's like, no, just letting yourself feel satisfied is the way to lose weight. So yeah, this is the key. It's like approaching it from when I have my meals, if I'm not satisfied, I go back for more, right? And letting myself go back for more, even if like until I feel that sense of satisfaction, because I know that's how I turn off the future overeating. And so my bonus tip for you around this satisfaction piece is just the idea that actually when we're feeling satisfied, it's actually just a decision. So what you're looking out for is just this inner knowing of, yep, that's enough. And you just feel that sense of, yeah, I don't need any more. I don't want any more. And when you let yourself feel that and you make that decision, if you're not sure, like it, because particularly if you haven't ever tried to do this before, if you've been counting calories or using external things to decide when to stop eating, it can be a bit like, oh, really? When? And so what you want to do is if you're not sure, if you don't have that sense of, yep, I feel satisfied, then it's a sign to have a few more bites, then check in with yourself again. And when you are satisfied, you will know, right? Just have that trust and keep experimenting until you get there. And there will be times where you go overboard and you have more than you need and you feel that, oh, that was too much. And that's just all part of the learning process of like, oh, sometimes I'll go too far, and that's okay. It's like just not seeing that as a failure, just seeing that as part of the learning process. And actually with one of my clients, I use in the Naturally Healthy Club the other day, we use the analogy of sometimes you'll like step on the brake too fast, and so you'll stop too soon, or sometimes you'll your reaction time won't be right on the money, and it's okay. That's just part of you learning. So that's it. And the tiny habit to implement with this is just getting into the habit of checking in with yourself. So when you notice, when you're maybe halfway through the meal, just starting to notice, are we satisfied yet? And it's definitely when you get to the end of your plate, just checking in. Am I satisfied? And if you're not satisfied, giving yourself permission to keep eating and having a few more bites until you feel that sense of satisfaction. Okay, so if you'd like some help building this habit of stopping when you feel satisfied, so you get to become this naturally healthy person who eats what you want and loses weight sustainably, then come and play with us in the Naturally Healthy Club. So we enroll twice a year, and for more details, check out the link in the show notes. Okay, have a beautiful week experimenting with just asking, am I satisfied? And I'll see you next week.